Mrinal Manohar, the CEO at CasperLabs. Mrinal is going to answer all your questions. We have a lot of questions coming from community because this is only for the community. Let's start. Hello, Mrinal.
Hey, Maciej. Thanks for having me on. Hi, everyone who's tuning in. I'm happy to answer your questions, and let's get this rolling.
So, Stefan Truffel, how many NDAs does CasperLabs have?
If by NDAs you're referring to how many enterprise partners are we at the NDA or MOU stage, I don't know the exact number. It's in the 30s. So, and many of them are Fortune 500s. So it's in the 30s, and many are Fortune 500s. If you're referring to companies that are NDA or post-NDA or post-MOU phase.
Okay, so the partnerships you have to this date are more like show. Nothing emerged from it. When are we going to see some result coming from your side?
Yeah, they're absolutely not show. So bear in mind, the cycle for development of an enterprise-grade application is much longer than a typical crypto project. A typical crypto project, you can build it in weeks, but bad things happen, right? Like if you looked at most DeFi protocols, people have lost tons of money, privacy has been given up, et cetera, et cetera. If you think about a Fortune 500 company, a CIO or CTO is managing an entity that has oftentimes tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions in enterprise value. Hence, their adherence to safety and building software correctly is much, much higher. As a result, products that are built on the enterprise often take a year, 2 years to actually build properly. The results from IPV are already starting to come across. We will start minting patents in the next few months. Similar on Metacast, but all the other partnerships that we've announced, IBM also, are all happening. Just bear in mind that the enterprise build cycle is slower than what we're typically used to in crypto. But also realize that it's much more valuable because think about what happened on OpenSea as an example, right? Trading volume went from 2.9 billion to, now I don't know, it's like 8 million a day or something, like a 99% decrease. If you're solving a problem for an enterprise, it's not like they really care about what the crypto market is doing. If they're solving an internal problem, like, hey, I want to trade healthcare assets, or hey, I want to, reconcile my mortgages using blockchain, that work doesn't stop. Regardless of what's happening in crypto land. And we think that's really important. And it's the biggest opportunity out there. So I disagree with the assertion that this is all show. But I do agree that the results will take a little longer because the build cycle for large enterprises is just much longer than it is in crypto land.
Okay, put more questions in the comment section. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Mrinal. So we have some questions from the Crypto Pioneer. I just copy-pasted them before. Why should the company decide to use Casper, which is currently not so well known out there in regard of existing blockchains, example like Ethereum? Is there any strategy in place to convince them?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So let me answer the first part. Why should they use Casper and not something else? There are several design decisions we made that no other blockchain, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, whoever, that they've just not done. And these are not just nice to have for enterprises, but essential. So I'll give you a few examples. Smart contracts need to be upgradable. The past is immutable, but there's absolutely no reason why the future needs to be immutable too. Think about it. If a company has a smart contract that is reconciling mortgages and the federal interest rate changes, your ability to update that smart contract is absolutely imperative. And the current method of culling the old smart contract, putting up a new one, is just not tenable. Enterprises need control over their own infrastructure. This doesn't mean control of the public network. It just means control of their own set of smart contracts. That's how every single IT revolution has happened, be it cloud computing, be it using external mainframes, etc. That's just one feature. Now, I could go on and say there are dozens of others, like our ability to have, we We respect open source and open programming standards, which allow our blockchain to fit very, very neatly within an existing tech stack, rather than requiring, specialized expertise internally. And any specialized expertise that's required, we provide that at CasperLabs because we have a professional services organization. So there are huge reasons why companies should use Casper. And it's also the reason why we probably have one of the largest Fortune 500 pipelines out there. IBM's evaluated tons of blockchains out there. Why is Hyperledger integrating with us? It's not by accident. It's because of the work we did with IPWE and the fact that we actually provide enterprise-grade code. Now, is this a longer sales cycle than what you're typically used to in crypto? Absolutely. But the prize at the end is much bigger. Now, let's go to the second question. How are we going to make people more aware? So just so you know, we did kind of the opposite of what happens in crypto. Usually in crypto, your first hire is your chief marketing officer, and then you go build the product. It's hype first, product later. We're product first, hype later. We spent the first 3 years actually building the underlying protocol. And the reason it took 3 years to build, as opposed to some protocols that took 1 or 1.5, is because we made expensive engineering decisions, like the upgradable smart contracts, like hyper modularity, etc. But long term, this is going to be great. It's going to allow us to interface with enterprises much more easily. And we've only hired a CMO this March. So we are now going to begin a big marketing push. And the marketing push is primarily going to be targeted on a B2B basis towards enterprises who are going to end up using the public chain, which is very, very good for the ecosystem overall. In addition to that, we're going through a big rebranding exercise. I don't think branding within the blockchain space has really been very good. And there's an opportunity here to really turn that on its head. So we're going through a massive rebranding exercise. We're just about to pick a PR agency. We will be at Davos again this year. We got 5 Fortune 500s, all $10-20 billion in revenue, excess of that, as clients as a result of our last foray at Davos. And we're really, really excited to go again. So yes, there's going to be a much larger marketing push and awareness push relative to what we had before. But we spent the first few years building the product. If there isn't a great product, why go shout about it from the rooftops? Now that the product's out there and working, and we have some really exciting stuff coming out in Casper 2.0, now's the time to push. So look forward to that. But yeah, getting the product right is the most important part. There's a reason why enterprises haven't used blockchain to date. And that's because there wasn't a blockchain or ProServe team that could actually serve them.
Okay, speaking about Davos, how Casper blockchain is going to disrupt telecommunication industry? I don't know. We can't talk about the company, but how is it going to disrupt this industry?
So I can't talk about specific companies. We're under NDAs with several large telecommunications providers. There are 2 or 3 very specific things that you can do in telecommunications that really, really require blockchain. So the first thing is metering. If you think about it, separate telecommunications companies own different amounts of bandwidth on the network. And as you can imagine, when you take your cell phone out and you want to make a phone call, the bandwidth in your area might actually belong to a different provider and not the person you've signed up with. And really, so there's a lot of trade that happens between telecommunications companies for reconciliation of this bandwidth. And that process is very pen and paper right now, which means since it's highly manual, there's tens, if not hundreds of millions of cost that exists creating the system. Moving this to blockchain and automating it will release tens or hundreds of millions of costs. So that's one use case. Another great use case, if you think about it, is telecommunications companies have access to really, really wide audiences. If you think about it, your interface with the internet at large primarily comes through a telecommunications company. So if you're thinking about really, really interesting use cases like loyalty programs, etc., it's really, really great if a telecommunications company did that. I can't go into more detail, but that's something to chew on. Another thing that people should realize is oftentimes telecommunications companies are systems integrators. Similar to IBM or Accenture, they give a lot of consultative help to very, very large enterprises. So there's a lot of opportunity to co-sell blockchain solutions into into large enterprises. One thing that's really, really important to note is you need the right product for this to happen. Being approved as a vendor internally at any systems integrator or telecom company is an extremely difficult process. And I'm happy to note, as you've seen with IBM and others, we have been approved. Don't think there are other layer 1 blockchains that are.
Okay, I have a couple of questions about the CSPR token. It's not about the price, but there is a lot of concern in the community that many business applications will use a private hybrid blockchain of Casper, and the public chain will not very much used. How do you address this concern? And I have a similar question.
All right.
Yeah, because because you said about IPv and the MetaCast minting NFTs at the on Casper network, but Meta has stated in many of the conferences, including at Davos, that their clients are not interested in Casper, but only on the blockchain. Does this mean CSPR is useless?
All right. So let me clarify this. This is probably the biggest misunderstanding in the community. First of all hybrid blockchains use the public network. Everything we're working with on enterprises uses the public network and hence needs CSPR. But let me explain why hybrid is really, really important. So I'll give you an analogy first, and then we'll talk about how it applies to blockchain, right? Think about cloud computing. What made cloud computing go from, everyone said, enterprises are never ever going to use cloud computing because they don't want to use a public system, they want to use their own infrastructure. And this was the line on Wall Street and everywhere for about a decade. And then suddenly cloud computing did this, meaning enterprises started using it all the time. And that was when hybrid installations were allowed. Hybrid installations are extremely important. So I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example of hybrid on cloud. Netflix uses AWS infrastructure to deliver Netflix videos to you. So all of the Netflix videos are coming to you via AWS or some other cloud provider. But what do you not have access to? You don't have access to Netflix deals with individual film studios. You don't have access to Netflix's deals with individual actors, actresses. You don't see the backend. It is exactly the same thing on blockchain. When we say hybrid, everything that's tradable and everything that requires public trust is going to come onto the public network. But for example, say it's a healthcare company doing something. You don't want people to have, you don't want the public to have access to, in any way, shape, or form, someone's healthcare records. So as a result, use a hybrid network. They build a private network that carries all the information, and then that private network parlays to the public network everything that needs to be tradable, everything that requires immutable trust. All these enterprise applications that we're talking about will bring massive volume to the public chain. I think it's a real misconception that we're doing private-only networks. That's not the value add at all. The value add is, hey, you can get the best of both worlds here. You can keep what's private, private to you, and you can keep what's public, public. Now, to Meta's comment, what Meta meant there is that enterprises care about the underlying technology and how they can use private and public blockchains. When she said they don't care about the crypto side, what she meant is, unlike the crypto community that look at price action, etc., the enterprise doesn't care about that. They care about how good your tech is, meaning having a higher coin market cap rank might matter for like a DeFi protocol, or might matter for that. An enterprise really doesn't care. They care about, are you well funded, which we are, and how good is your tech? Because at the end of the day, they're making a technical decision about moving real infrastructure somewhere. It doesn't mean that, you know, CSPR is useless. CSPR is the utility token that runs the network. For every single enterprise, CSPR is incredibly important because that's how they're going to send transactions to the public network. Via a hybrid network, sure. But that actually means they're more comfortable sending more transactions to the private network because, sorry, to the public network, because they can keep private what they need to keep private.
Okay, that's great. So you said about well-funded, so we have a couple of questions about that. Why hasn't Casper raised money from the big funds, Binance, FTX, or other well-known venture capitals? They keep throwing money at the new blockchain, example, Aptos, giving them an amazing runway and higher visibility. Why don't they consider taking at least a punt on Casper? How can Casper stay relevant without raising larger funding? So can you tell more about this well-funded, new hires, exciting news?
Yeah, of course. So let's start with the funding. We're well funded. So we've been careful. We didn't sponsor sports teams, etc. In fact, in this current environment, we're one of the few companies that's hiring. Since the blockchain downturn, our team has gone from like 67 people to we're almost 80 now at CasperLabs. So we're well funded. We had an extremely successful coinless sale. We've been very, very careful with how we spend it. And we're really well funded. We run our company like an enterprise software company, not like a startup that's trying to build a hype machine. We are actually raising funds as we speak. Our approach is a little different. We go to people who have very, very long-term horizons. Similar to our Series A, a lot of the funding is going to come from corporate VCs, think very large companies, venture arms, who are also our customers, as well as family offices. And why this is really, really valuable is their time horizon is not the crypto time horizon. They park money for 7 to 10 years. What we're trying to build requires patience. It requires long-term effort. And because the enterprise sales cycle is slower than the crypto sales cycle. But bear in mind, just like in every other industry, in cloud computing, everyone ignored the enterprise for a long time. They thought it's just going to be startups and revolutionaries who are going to use cloud computing. But if you think about it now, 99% of the money that goes into cloud computing comes from enterprise. The same thing is going to happen in blockchain. Everyone is ignoring that side. Everyone is focused on crypto trading and other stuff. And while that's interesting, and we focus on that as well, long term, as a community, the more tools and things we can build to get large companies interested in building on us is really going to lead to long-term success and probably something that's industry changing.
Okay, we have.
And you asked a question about some key hires, right?
Yeah, key hires. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, we've had some amazing key hires recently. So first of all, our CMO who joined us, call it March of this year, Michael Dobak at CasperLabs. He was a CEO for South and West of Ogilvy and Mather, which is a non-crypto, like real world marketing agency, probably the best in the world. Those of you in the United States, if you saw like Progressive's like Flow campaign, he was responsible for that. That resulted in billions of dollars of value for that company. And so we're going to be slow and steady. He's working on the rebranding exercise, what we're going to be doing in Davos, etc. Also at Labs, we'll have a COO joining soon. Cliff, who you all know is still on the C-suite. He's going to be Chief of Strategic Relations. But for the BD and enterprise side, we have a gentleman named Ross Mackay joining around about December. He really helped build, Dropbox's EMEA business. And, that was hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And again, because we're generating revenue from enterprise partners, our funding needs look quite different from other blockchains. But as you can see, we're attracting the best people in the industry. And there's a reason why, because we have an actual product and something that enterprises actually care about. Sure, it's a longer term stretch, but the proof is in the pudding, right? Why are industry veterans coming on board with us if, especially given everything that's out there? It's not about hype all the time. Sometimes it's about the real product.
Can I add Joel Curado? I'm going to have a live stream with him tomorrow. So be with us tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, Joel.
From Cisco. Smart cities, IoT, NFTs.
Yeah, Joel basically, was very senior at Cisco. He's based out of Geneva. He's also. I'm glad to hear you're interviewing him next week. He's incredible too.
Tomorrow. He's tomorrow.
Oh, great!
Tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yep. Okay. Another questions. Thank you guys for those questions. It's a lot. Okay. So we have another one coming from Dashi. Fast forward 5-8 years. How many transactions are gonna happen per day? What is your estimate when enterprise use Casper?
I mean, if you're asking me for a number, that's difficult. I expect 5 to 8 years from now, the public chain will be almost at capacity, meaning it'll be almost be filled to capacity, and at that point we'll have to really think about like the hybrid nature. Like the way we think about sharding is hybrid, right? Like if an enterprise has a hybrid setup, you don't have to send every unnecessary transaction to the blockchain. Just send the ones you need to. Like, for example, take Spotify, right? If you took every play and threw it on the blockchain, you would fill up any blockchain immediately, right? I don't know. Every second there's like 10,000 plays or 40,000 plays. I don't know what it is. But really what you want to do is aggregate a certain amount of plays per recording artist to figure out what royalties are owed to them. And now you get to a more reasonable, maybe every second there's 8 or 9 that Spotify is sending to the network. And the way they can do that is create a private instance of Casper and then make that private instance use our system called Checkpoint Charlie to get the audit trail on the public network as and when necessary and as and when something needs to be tradable. But 5 to 8 years from now, I expect us to be close to at capacity. And we'll have to think about lots of scaling strategies. The good news is, because we didn't fork any other chain and we built this from scratch, our ability to upgrade our blockchain, as the community knows, we've upgraded it 8 or 9 times already. Casper 2.0 is going to be a really, really big upgrade, but we can do things like that for a long, long time.
Okay, another question. I don't know if you want to answer that. Are you going to reconciliation with Vitalik Buterin? The two teams must join forces because Ethereum and CasperLabs need each other.
We have no beef with Vitalik. If you're referring to the lawsuit with Vlad, that's just over naming rights to name Casper. And so, the temporary restraining order got tossed out. Several motions in his case were dismissed. I don't know what happens there. It's just gonna, it's gonna take years to reconfigure. Vlad worked with us for a while, but he stopped since November of 2019. But he was there in the beginning, and he did work with us for a while. We have no beef with Vitalik at all. I think I disagree with some things in terms of the product not being really enterprise grade or enterprise ready at Ethereum. But please note, I'm a seed investor in Ethereum. I bought Ethereum right at its inception. And I think a lot of innovations have come to the industry through Ethereum. The reason I chose to found this business is because no one is focusing on the enterprise. And enterprise really, really wants to use blockchain. And yeah, we have no beef. There's no need for a reconciliation. In fact, Patrick Storchnegger, who sits on the board of the association, also sits on the board of the Ethereum Foundation. All our research is open source. They're welcome to use it. There's no beef there. No issues.
That's great. That's great to hear. Why is CasperLabs not building anything on the public chain like the DEX, Bridge, NFT marketplace, or even a working wallet? Instead, everything is outsourced to DeFiXDAO or MEC, for example. And second question, DeFi on CSPR lacks inflow of new projects. What are your future approaches to get more people to build on CSPR? We see that some devs jump off from the network because they say it's actually hard to build on. On the other hand, this is the continuation. We hear that it's easy to build on Casper. So what is the problem that these devs have?
All right, this is actually, so let me answer the dev question first, because this is, I think, a big misconception. What you have to understand is, who is it easy or hard to build for? If you're a dev, a non-blockchain dev, which is 99.9% of devs out there, if you're a non-blockchain dev, Casper is the easiest or one of the easiest blockchains to build on, because the habits to build on Casper, to build robust code, are similar to what you would have learned outside. If you're building, call it a search engine, or you're building, a database management tool. Casper is actually one of the easiest to build if you're a regular dev, meaning, hey, I work at Google, I want to build a tool. However, if you're used to Solidity, Casper is a little difficult to build. But now bear in mind, we're going after developers in general, not just Solidity developers. If you're a Solidity developer, Casper is a little tougher to build because since Solidity is a proprietary programming language, in my opinion, it actually creates some bad habits in programmers. So I'll give you an example. For example, Solidity doesn't have a bool function. So I'll tell you what a bool function is. If you want to know whether something is true or false, there's a data type called bool, which just has only two states, true or false. So it's an on-off switch. Solidity doesn't have that. So what's the bad habit you have to do? You have to say, okay, I'm going to say my switch is a number, and it's either a 0 or a 1. Now, this is really, really bad because there's all sorts of exploits you can do with that. In fact, if you think about all the big DeFi exploits that have happened, most of them have happened because the EVM and Solidity have issues like this, which is, they don't have a strict data type structuring. So yes, Casper is a little tougher to build on if you've only built on Solidity, because there are bad habits that you have to unlearn. But if you're just a regular dev out there, it's one of the easiest. I mean, yes, it's Rust, which is a strongly typed language, and we chose that for safety reasons. But sorry, relative to any other blockchain, it's actually easier. So it depends on what your audience is, right? Like if you're going after a guy who's building stuff at Google, it's actually pretty easy to build on. What was the other question, Mache?
Yep, I'm going to display that again. That was this one. Why the CasperLabs is focused on the core development instead of...
So the reason really is we're focusing our energy a lot on enterprise adoption. I do agree that a lot of this stuff is very, very important for the ecosystem. But, different entities have to do different things. I'm really, really glad that we have someone like Steve D on board at the association now, who's going to really, really drive a lot of these things: DEXs, bridges, NFT marketplaces, wallets, etc. I wouldn't use the word outsourced. We're a community, right? We're a community with different entities. Labs focuses on core development and focuses on enterprise adoption. The association and the DevDAO focus a lot more on what I'd say more typical decentralized apps. I would agree that, there might have been a bit of a rough start there, but, we've brought the right resources on board, and, it's going to go really well. Always bear in mind that stuff that's really good takes longer to build than stuff that fizzles. And so, I'd always encourage some patience. Do you have any direct exposure to CSPR through ownership? How confident are you that we'll make it through a brutal bear winter? Yes, I have tons of personal exposure. I'm okay to share that. I've never, ever sold a single one, nor do I intend to for the next couple of decades, or a decade at least, which shows you how much faith I have in it. Look, this is a long-term play. It is directly related to the other question. Like, do you think... I'm not going to comment on bull run and all of that. All I'm going to say is, look, at the end of the day, the biggest blockchain out there is going to be the one that gets the most enterprise usage. I'm confident of that. Now, I think there's a very good chance that we're that chain. Now, I'm very confident in that, but you can never be 100% sure, right? Like, I don't know if there's a group of like 50 developers who are trying to replicate what we're doing. But as far as I know and what I can see in the market, we're really the most enterprise grade chain and service offering out there. Now, it's a longer cycle. It looks very, very different from the splash and grab nature of crypto in general. But when we founded the company, we knew that it's going to be a longer cycle. Let me give you one example of how we're structured that's different. Because we're equity and ESOP based, like a regular, software firm, we have a very low attrition rate for software in general. For blockchain, it's orders of magnitude better. People who join CasperLabs stay for a long time. And that's really, really important. Because, accumulated knowledge is very, very important if you're trying to build something real. It's not important if you want to do some hypey DeFi thing, pump things and leave. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here for a really, really long time. Pantelis Yapnis, what is your view on the macro? Fed seems committed to draining liquidity. How confident are you and CASP are getting through it? All right. Look, I can't comment on the Fed in general. Monetary policy. I think people are overreactionary to monetary policy in general. Worldwide GDP and production actually hasn't suffered as much of a systemic shock through COVID as many people anticipated. Has it caused inefficiencies in markets and supply chains? Of course. The war in Ukraine, in addition, took about 11% of oil supply off because of, sanctions that were imposed against Russia. So yeah, there are some intermittent shocks. But, general human productivity, which is, what affects GDP, hasn't really fallen as much as people would think. And so while we might have a rough few years, people are about doom and gloom of the human race. I think that might be slightly overblown. There's always a chance that happens. But to the second part of the question, how do you think, we get through this? Look, we are getting through it, right? We're one of the few protocols that's actually hiring in this market. As a result, we're getting amazing talent, and most of it not from the crypto industry. We're talking about industry leaders from places like Dropbox, Ogilvy, Algorand, who are coming and joining us to build something great. We've structured our balance sheet and everything to really resist long-term downturns. So, we're just going to be heads down, build a real product, and make sure, we do the best we can. Cryptoverse, wait, can you please answer my question? I always argue about this with my friend. How important is decentralization for enterprises? Do you think more people will use decentralized networks? Decentralization is very, very important for enterprises. Now, let me explain where. It's very, very important on the public network side. So when you have a hybrid network, it is very, very important that the public network is really, really decentralized. Because think about it. Hey, I'm IBM and my client wants something that, is immutable and trusted for anything that's tradable. They don't want to reconcile that to another enterprise, right? Those are their competitors. However, if it's a truly decentralized network where no one has an on-off switch on it, that becomes very, very trustworthy. Now, where's decentralization? Where do they not want decentralization? Which is why you want hybrid networks. Is, hey, I have a lot of healthcare data that I'm not allowed to share because that would violate HIPAA. And so they want to keep that on the private side. Decentralization from anything that touches the public network is very, very, very important to enterprises. Can we negotiate in future NDAs that we are more in the bigger picture? All right. So let me answer this. I wish, but think about how an enterprise works, right? An enterprise, let's take any example. IBM, 60,000 people, huge legal department. How much leeway do you think there is to, hey, I want to negotiate this thing with you, but, I want to tell my community about it. It's very, very rare. Now, think about IBM, right? We announced this Hyperledger integration. We announced this big partnership. And now, Meta and Ashok were there at the Hyperledger Foundation in Dublin, met tons of enterprises, and we're going to go to market together. Now, you heard that announcement. That took 2 years. So just so you know, we've been speaking to them for the past 2 years. That didn't just magically happen. So for 2 years, you guys didn't know anything that was happening. And, we were quietly building in the background, but then it came out. Similarly, when I say, we have like dozens and dozens of really big companies in our pipeline, they're all there. But it's going to take a while for us to announce it because think about it, they have to get internal approvals. A lot of these companies are publicly traded. The way they work is very, very different, right? Like I run a company that has 80 people, but IBM is, 50,000, 60,000 people. And a lot of the enterprises we're talking to are tens of thousands of people. Plus they have millions of shareholders. So they're very, very careful when it comes to PR and announcements. PR and announcements will happen with every single one of them. It's baked into a lot of the contracts. But really, they like to do it when, the product is more ready for prime time, after a lot of internal vetting has happened, because that's just how enterprises are, right? They need to be careful about this stuff. They make a mistake, tens of billions of dollars of shareholder value could go out. And, public companies are subject to all sorts of public scrutiny.
Okay, guys, if you have any more questions, this is the time for passing them.
Wait, Stephen, when might the next NDAs get lifted, months, years? Look, NDAs never get lifted, right? The way it works, so I'll just explain. NDAs never get lifted. The way NDAs are always in place, but what an NDA says is it's non-disclosure, but we can disclose if it's mutually agreed, right? It's like, hey, we want to do a press release. Can you sign off on this? Yes, we're signed off. Okay, now we talk about it. So I think you're misunderstanding what an NDA is. An NDA is like neither side can single-handedly go talk about something. But if both sides agree to talk about something, they can. And so, that's how it works. And so, similar to what happened with IBM. We have an NDA. It's not gone away. But, we mutually decided to talk about the Hyperledger Bridge. We mutually decided about the go-to-market strategy. Mutually decided to talk about a bunch of things. And there's a lot more that's going to come from that particular one and several more. Can you confirm block time? Sorry, go ahead.
Casper 2.0.
Can you confirm block time goal for Casper 2.0 is 4 seconds? It's somewhere in that region. It's somewhere in that region. I don't know. Look, this is a meta question. Engineering is a fluid thing, right? Like it goes back and forth. It's somewhere. It's in a single-digit region. I can't tell you. Hey, it's definitely 4. It's definitely 6. I don't know what that is, but it's in the sub 10. Yeah.
So I have another question about disrupting another industries. So we have a telecommunication. Ashok Ranadiv said once about the supply lines, the vaccination supply lines. What else? Which industries is going to be disrupted by CasperLabs and Casper Network?
Finance. Look, finance is one thing that we're really, really focused on. Look, when people think DeFi in crypto, they think about yield farms that yield, 50% and, asset swap, etc. That's not sustainable business. If something grows at 50%, worldwide GDP grows at about 3.7%. If you take the last 20 years, which means anything that grows 50% forever is basically going to become the entire world GDP, just mathematically. So if you think about it, it's not sustainable. What is sustainable? Regular mortgages, loans, actual credit lending, equities. Now, some people might laugh at that and say, hey, looking at the world today, it's not sustainable. I'm saying relative to DeFi, those things are really sustainable. And a lot of those can see tons of cost savings and new revenue opportunities if they're monitored or dealt with on blockchain. There just isn't a blockchain out there that's secure enough or a ProServe team that can build the real complexity. If a bank were to take leases or mortgages and put them on blockchain, there's so much cost they could save and make so much tradability of one's untradeable assets. And these are real assets, right? Like with leases, there's actual cars or houses or whatever behind it. Same thing with mortgages. These are actual real world assets. And so what we're doing through Nucleus Finance and the Actis partnership, we're really excited. We think DeFi is going to be huge, but not the way it's happened in the past. The way DeFi is going to be huge is actual banks, actual insurance companies, actual leasing companies use this technology. Look forward to lots of announcements in the future, but I think finance and fintech is really a big focus for us, but not the way it's been done in crypto. I think obviously it's not safe, right? Bank sees what happened on, I forget the name, that jump trading DeFi thing that lost people 370 million. Obviously they get panicked to death by that kind of stuff, and they want to build it right. Those kind of experiments do not engender you well with actual financial institutions who have real customers and real assets that they're backing. So to do this, you have to do it right, and to do things right takes a little time.
Okay. Last week I did a material for the Polish community about the enterprise and the big companies like Google or BlackRock investing into crypto and blockchain sphere, and there was a connection. BlackRock invested in FTX Ventures invested in Antoni Scaramucci Skybridge Capital, and Skybridge Capital invested in Algorand. But Antoni Scaramucci dropped like a couple hours, couple days before the Davos event. He should speak at the Davos event. Are you in touch? Are you talking?
Anthony Scaramucci is friends with investors in CasperLabs. He didn't drop. He had to fly out, and that's the reason why. He didn't drop. We went to his event the night before. So he had a wine tasting in Davos the night before, and most of the CasperLabs team were there. We spoke to him. Look, I can't comment specifically on our relationship with Skybridge, but he's good friends with a lot of investors. I think sometimes people look far too much into like specific incidents. He's a busy guy. His flight got rescheduled. It was on the last day for us, and so he had to fly out early to meet some things that he had to do in New York. Yeah, we were with him the night before at his event, and he just had to reschedule and had to go. And so that's all that happened.
I'm just Sherlock Holmes trying to find some
look, oftentimes, right, there's some small thing that happens and people like blow it out of proportion. Like, no, like, also think about it, right? Like, why would anyone do that? If someone doesn't like you, they just won't agree to be on your panel at all in the first place, right? No one's gonna agree to be on your panel and then like last minute like pull the plug on you. I mean, real businessmen don't do stuff like that. So yeah, I find it funny if people think that's what happened. No, there's a scheduling conflict, and you have to return to the United States.
Okay, are you going to some events this year or next one besides the Davos?
I'll be speaking at this event in Saudi Arabia, which is really focused on enterprise adoption, especially in the MENA region, so the Middle East and North Africa. So I'll be speaking there. I think the CTO of IBM is going to be there at that event, etc. We'll share with you guys if there's a video feed or anything. So that's one that I know. I think Blockchain LA. There's a couple of events in the Santa Monica LA region, which I'm not going to personally, but I know Meta and other members of our team will be going to. Those are the only two on my end, but you're speaking to other members of my team. Look, we try to divide and conquer, right? Like I try to do 2 or 3 things a year, but I can't do more, right? And then, Meta does a few more than I do. And then other members of the team do several. We try to divide and conquer. We're really busy. I work 80 hours a week on CasperLabs, and, we have a lot of work to do. And, I really want to focus on, our core customers and enterprise folks to make sure, we're bringing as much real value and real transactions to the network. And as mentioned, several times, don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse. It's a longer sales cycle, but it's much more stable, right? It's not hype driven. And, if they build something on Casper that solves a business issue from them, it's not going to go away. It's going to stay and it's going to endure because it's not hype driven. It actually solves an issue for them.
Okay, I have another question about, you said about the MENA region, and there is a Telangana in India and the China partnerships. What else coming?
Yeah. No, so MENA region it's not a very specific deployment. It's a region we've looked at for a while. Things have gone a bit slower than we would have liked, but there are some really big players who have re-engaged with us. I think it's a little more conservative, on the business side. And I think the, Luna, blow up really caused a lot of ramifications in the region and reduced trust in blockchain in general in the MENA region. As you can imagine, the MENA region is a little more conservative when it comes to adopting technology. And now I think, especially, seeing our product, they do view us as more trusted, which is why I was actually invited to speak at this event in Riyadh. So I do think that, they're getting over it. There was a bit of a shock when that whole Luna collapse happened. Telangana is the state in India where Hyderabad exists. It's, one of the biggest developer hubs in the world. The government is very pro blockchain, and we're the official blockchain that's working with their state. A lot of really interesting things happening there. Again, I can't talk specifically about what we're working on, but they've publicly announced that they're working with us. But I can't talk specifically about what we're doing there, but we will once it's built. So, but it's really cool. Think about like something that's government-wide. In China, the Chengdu chain, the way China's been doing this, and again, this is speculation on my side, is they've picked like 8 or 9 prominent layer ones, and we were one of them. And really, they've given us specific regions to try an open permissioned blockchain initially to basically battle test the technology. And once you prove and battle test the technology, you basically are now endorsed by a government-supported entity in China. So after that, moving a lot of that infrastructure to the public chain, doing more things with the government, all become possible. But think of it as, it's a proving ground first, which is I think not a bad approach to do things. As I mentioned earlier, we're super long term, right? It's like, look, if we need to prove ourselves to get a government endorsement in China, it's worth it. We've built what I think is the best product in the market, and take some time to prove it. That's fine. We're around forever.
Okay, and you want to get exposure for the Chinese companies, right?
Yeah, Chinese companies and government entities, right? In China, a lot of the companies, just based on how their economic model works, are highly tied in with the government, right? Like I think people misunderstand China when they think like, okay, it's a Communist Party of China, everything's owned by the government. That's not true. Tencent, Baidu, there are a lot of massive companies that are 100% private. But the government does have a certain level of control over data flow and policy, and so working with the government in China is almost necessary to do business at any level.
Okay, I have a question for StakeSpire. Can the community somehow help to bring clients and use cases to CasperLabs or the Casper chain besides development and posting on Twitter and hosting great AMAs like that one? Thank you very much.
This is a great question. I've never thought of that before. Let me talk to the team and look. If there's the ability to do this, that would actually be really great. Let me talk internally about how we can actually operationalize this. I don't think this has been done before, so look, I'll be honest, I don't have a great answer to that. But let me check in internally. That's actually a really great thought. I'm happy to check.
Okay. Did you answer the question about the Hyperledger exposure to the companies inside the Hyperledger umbrella?
Oh yeah. So tons of exposure. I mean, already started, right? Meta and Ashok were in Dublin for the last Hyperledger conference. It was actually just last week. Met tons of enterprises. Look, there's lots of Hyperledger installations out there. We're building a bridge to Casper, and Hyperledger is private only. So if they already have a private blockchain and they want a hybrid blockchain to post some stuff and make it tradable on a public blockchain, we're basically the official one with IBM because we're officially building a bridge. So there's lots of existing Hyperledger customers that we can bring over. If you think about it, almost every private blockchain out there is some Hyperledger form. And so we're building that bridge. So we're really excited to go after existing customers. But what's also really interesting is we can go after new customers and say, we have this, offering where you have Hyperledger plus Casper or private Casper plus Casper. Choose what you want, right? Like if you've already used Hyperledger and you're comfortable with that for your internal infrastructure, you can still bridge to, the external blockchain. And now the reason why all this bridging is so easy goes back to what I said right at the beginning. We made some very expensive engineering decisions in terms of modularity and open standards that enable us to do things like this. You can't really do this on other blockchains. And it goes back to what I said earlier, right? It's very easy to build on Casper if you're a regular dev. It's a little difficult if you're a Solidity dev, but that's mostly because Solidity, gives you some bad habits.
Okay, so on the Hyperledger fabric, there is a Ripple logo, and there's a bunch of XRP community guys out here, especially Kevin Cage and Encash and many more. People from XRP Army, XRP community support Casper. Do you have a connection with Ripple?
I mean, me personally, I've been investing in crypto for 10 years. So yeah, obviously I hold some Ripple. I think anyone who's been investing in the industry this long. In terms of like actual like dev work. I mean, what they're trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve is quite different, right? Like Ripple is more an alternative to Swift and other payment rails. We can do that also, but really a lot of our focus is on smart contracts and, intelligence behind transfer of value, whatever it is, whether it's an NFT, financial assets, etc. And so I think we're actually quite different and non-competitive. So, if there's ever a tech stack that, wants to also use Ripple as their, transfer mechanism, we're open to that. We're very, very pragmatic, right? We're very, very pragmatic when it comes to how technology, we just want technology to be used appropriately where appropriate. Blockchain doesn't solve every single problem in the world, but it can solve a huge bunch of them and save a ton of cost and create a lot of revenue. And we just want to focus there. Long-winded way of saying, no, there's no official relationship, but there's no animosity either. We're always willing to partner with whoever.
Yeah. I'm just sharing the website hyperledger.org to show you guys how many companies out there, and the CasperLabs is out here. So this is huge.
Yeah, and
Congrats.
I'll be more specific, right? A lot of those companies are users of Hyperledger, right? Our relationship goes further. We are an official tech partner with Hyperledger. Like, we are the one public chain that Hyperledger is bridging to right now, especially at least on a smart contracts basis. And so, we're really excited about that partnership. We think it'll bring a lot of great things to the community.
Okay, last couple of questions. Is there any future plan for cross-chain communication with a chain such as Axelar Crypto? John asked.
Sure. If there's a business use case for anything, like someone says, hey, here's the thing, right? You can go bridge to everything, build every sort of connection out there. But if you think about it, lots of people say, hey, I've bridged to these 90 chains, but, there's 3 that are actually used or 2 that are actually used.
Yep.
It's usually best to go do things when there's actual demand for it. And so if there's ever demand for any specific bridge, yeah, we'll build it. We'll do it. And we'll do it right. But I think the whole build it and they will come is something we don't really believe in. It's like, when they ask us to build it, we'll build it for them. And, we're super flexible and our platform is super easy to upgrade, unlike most blockchains out there. So we can be a lot more flexible. But look, there's nothing preventing us from integrating with Axelar. I've not heard if there's been specific demand from any of our existing clients. But if there is demand from the community or our existing clients, we're open to it.
Okay, that's great. And if you want to share something special, Mrinal, let's go. This is your time, like last 2 minutes, and we're going to end. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to thank the community. Love all you guys, and I think we're all together building something great here. I will say, what we're trying to do is novel. This has not been done before. It has been done before in the sense that cloud computing eventually penetrated the enterprise and created trillions of dollars of value for Amazon, Google Cloud, Azure in particular. Yeah, Azure's Microsoft. Yep. But it took 10 years. We have a really, really early start at this. It's actually happening faster than we thought, but slower than the crypto communities can be extremely impatient. So I want to say I thank you all for your patience. We are working hard, hiring aggressively every day to make this enterprise adoption real. But I thank you for your patience, and if there are things we can do better, let us know. We're very, very transparent and open with our community. We don't, hide behind walls. We're willing to talk at any time and answer any questions. And so, I really, really appreciate that. And I really, really appreciate all of you. Thanks for your time today and for listening. And if you have any feedback for us or ways that you can help us, let us know. We're always open to engaging.
Yeah, I just post this in the comments section. There is a link to the tool that Piotr Dziubecki from Casper Association made to bring you to engage more and put your community engagement ideas. So check that website. And so last question, Mrinal. So when you're going to be public company?
I don't know. It's probably going to take a while, man. It's probably going to take a while because
finger crossed.
Yeah, I mean there's several things we want to do before that. I mean, you do realize that like being a public company also comes with a level of risk, right? Like there's a lot of there's a certain point where being a public company makes sense when you're large enough, right? Because so to manage just the disclosures you have to do as a public company takes a 20-person team or a 40-person team, which in our case would be a quarter to half of our staff, right? We'd have to hire basically the equivalent of a quarter to half of our staff if you wanted to go public right now. There's a reason why most public companies have a few thousand employees. And the reason is the scale of what it takes to manage. You have to file 10Qs. You have to file, at least in the United States, you have to file 10Qs. You have to file 10Ks. You have to be Sarbanes-Oxley compliant. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do that a lot of people don't realize as a public company, and it's massive overhead. It's really expensive. I'm talking to a tune of tens of millions of dollars a year. We're not at that scale yet. When we do get to that scale, we will definitely consider it. But maybe it's better to stay private forever. It really depends on what capital structures look like at that time. But the goal is to get to that size, obviously, right? Like we've gone from, beginning of this year, we're 60 odd people. Now we're just over 80. So we're growing pretty aggressively, and we'll continue to because we've built out that way. Nice guitars, Mrinal. Thank you. Mostly PRSs. That's the brand I like, and breed love for acoustics.
Okay, that's it. I'm not gonna take more your time. Thank you very much, Mrinal. Thank you, community, for having us and talked today. See you tomorrow with Joel Curado. So see you soon. Thank you very much, Mrinal, for today.
Yeah, thanks, Maciej. Thanks, community. Cheers. Bye.